Live, and we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to OTAKUBROS Live. I am your panel of peeps, fellow weebs, fellow otakus, fellow Omnibros, honorary Omnibros. We have a little bit of everything tonight, and I am just going to go ahead and introduce everybody right there for the whole world to see. How is everybody doing tonight?
Everybody right there. I'm doing very well this morning.
Oh, yeah, there we go. We got an international member and one of our best of bros. Am I going to reference all of you guys by your nicknames? Because I see Mongo, I see
Don't do mine.
Sequential Consequence.
I was watching the Fangirlz yesterday, and they were having a hard time saying it.
Well, regardless, I am so happy that basically, if you are part of the Omnibus groups, you're basically looking at the administration over at the farm, the Otaku farm right there. We're missing one member. The invitation was sent, but unfortunately, he could not be here. But yeah, all five of us are in the Otaku's farm, and we are really excited to finally bring you a discussion topic that these nerds have been wanting to talk about for a very, very long time. And I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's freaking go ahead and do it and talk all about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Now, I'm not an expert on the subject because I've only seen the anime, but these nerds have read the manga and consume it on a daily basis. So I'm very interested in what these guys have to say about a wonderful series. And yeah, why don't all of you guys start with your introductions and all that stuff as I get ready to do our plug mention from our wonderful sponsor, InStockTrades.com, where you can get all your manga, all your books, all your collected editions up to 50% off. Loyalty discounts tack on an extra 2% to that. And if you order $50 or more in your collected editions order, you get free shipping. How about that? Fantastic customer service and wonderful packaging that you can only get when you visit our sponsor's website, in.com. I give you my JoJo panel right here. Take it away, guys.
What's up, everyone?
What's
happening? How you guys
doing? I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed we're not talking about Chobits today.
We can talk about Chobits.
I don't know if I want to watch it.
Yeah.
I tried like a decade ago, and if I wasn't into it a decade ago, I definitely won't be into it now.
No, you've been saying.
Same.
Actually, that's not true, but.
Well, I think
I
was going to say we should start with Ryley, because you read JoJo's before any of us, like 15 years ago, right? Back when it was just part 3, as it were.
Yeah, I'm the hip group, into it before it was cool. Back in, I think it was 2005 that it first started being published in the US in English. It's one of those things that like you've heard of it, and you've seen it somewhere, you've seen the name, you've seen the character. I don't know where I saw it before, but I had, and it popped up in an issue, a preview on in a Shonen Jump magazine, and I would read all the previews, and typically I would buy everything that they were putting out. I think there was maybe one exception back then of something I didn't pick up, at least the first volume of. And I read the first chapter that they had in there of JoJo and immediately was like, this is something I definitely want to read. And I bought the first volume, immediately fell for it. I thought it was fantastic, interesting, fun. And I also immediately learned from like the forward pages in the volume that this was part 3. And then upon doing a little bit of online research, discovered this plethora of information that this was part 3. There's 2 things ahead of it with different characters. And then afterwards, there's another several parts. And at that time, they were only just beginning on part 7 of Steel Ball Run was just starting. And I was so intrigued by all this stuff. And I remember going to a store in New York, the Kinokuniya, or were there, and they had all the Japanese volumes, and I was just it's like a whole wall of JoJo, and I'm sitting there like, shoot, I've only read like 4 of these books. But years of popularity, well after Viz finished publishing the 3rd part, and the anime really helped. It became really popular, and now we have all of parts 1, 2, and 3, and part of part 4 out in hardcover. Part 5 has been adapted. We're waiting on part 6 to be announced. Part 7 concluded in Japan. We have part 8 is already 20 plus volumes in. So there's a lot of JoJo stuff out there, and I'm just really happy that finally, like, I have friends whom I can enjoy this with. So there we go.
I'm happy I have friends.
It's a common symptom of watching JoJo, is just wanting to share it with everybody.
Yes, yeah. And that's also, I think it's a common thing that pulls people in, is because the fan base can be so rabid, and you're sitting there making inside jokes and comments about stuff. It just pushes you to want to be part of it. And especially if it's people that you know who are into it. Like, I think, you know, Gio, I think you were the last one of all of us to really start getting into it. And I know that you mentioned, like, a lot in our group chats and stuff, like, man, I need to start it, because we're always making jokes, making comments, and it's infectious, and you just want to see what the heck all this ridiculous, like, who are these muscle bound dudes that are so hot looking, and like, why are they all named after classic rock bands and stuff? So you have to get into it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I didn't realize that up until Gio made like a casual comment saying I've only watched like 13 episodes, but already I can see like every single reference, or everything around me is a reference always, all the time. And that's when it really clicked, and that's when it really, because I got into it because it seemed like something that was cool. The only person that really like pushed me to watch it was Alex, and but yeah, JoJo is all around you all the time, and it only gets worse from here.
That's the most spiritual thing.
It's like a fun cult, to be honest.
It's a cult, exactly. The cult of what's his name? What's the mangaka's name?
Well, I think that's why it's so popular, right? Is that it is really weird. Like, the bizarre bit is definitely true, but it works on so many levels for so many different people. Like, if you just kind of want really weird stuff, like the Kakoin, like with the cherry, like, just weird shit like that. Like, it's got that, but it's also got like really wholesome stories, like about community and sticking together and like family. And I think it's like, you could almost say like you come for the memes, but you actually stay for like the really good stories. And the fights are so good. Like, people don't often talk about the fights, but it's definitely like a major draw, especially when you start getting into like the really crazy stand battles. Like, I think even if you compare the start of part 3, where it's like, you have Polnareff and Avadol, and it's like Fencing Man versus like Firebird. And then even by part 5, you've got like a miniature Spitfire fighting against a guy who can like shrink people. Like, that's just crazy, but it somehow works, and it ratchets the tension really well. And I think Araki is just so, like, he just does whatever he wants, and I think a lot of people are able to kind of pick up on that authenticity and his desire just to have fun. Like you said, it's infectious. Like, it's infectious from the fans, but you pick it up from the manga as well, and the anime as well, which I definitely think has helped. Like, I got into it because I saw all the Dio memes, and I was like, okay, I just have to know what Dio, what his deal is, and then it was just, from there the rest was history.
Yeah, man, I think that Araki's creativeness and just how far he takes these powers and stuff, that's a lot of what I remember. There was a time when I was reading one of the earlier volumes of part 3, and I was sitting at my friend's house on the bed, and I started like laughing, and he was like, "What's up?" Because he read a lot of manga, but he never read JoJo, and I was like, I kind of explained it to him, and then I was like, so now they're like a gorilla on a boat.
Oh my god.
And he was like, that sounds really stupid. And then I was like, I said, you have to kind of understand the premises of this. And he was like, you mean I was like, both. Like, so I kind of play on words with him, but I was like, it's because I forget what I said, but then I was like, no, it's like it's on a boat, and the boat is the thing. And then I was like, but you also have to understand the premise behind it too to really get it. But it's as stupid as it sounds with me telling you. But just that it shows how crazy the ideas are. But no matter how crazy those ideas are, they always work, and they are always entertaining to watch or read.
Yep.
And I think, I definitely think Araki, like, he does a great job of, it's a tough line to walk, but like he takes it seriously, but it's not overtly serious itself. Like, everyone in the show, like everyone in the show and the stories, like they're not like, oh my god, a ghost stand thing, that's ridiculous. But Araki kind of, like he manages to keep it a bit light, all the characters, behaving normally. And I think it's that kind of like, it's not overtly serious, so the battles don't feel dull and dreary and gritty, but it's not like taking itself completely, unseriously as all, so you don't feel like there's no stakes. So I think it's that really fine tone he walks that really kind of helps sell it for me, especially in the days of so many isekai. Having something unique and fresh like JoJo's is great.
There's definitely I think moments where you'll see some of the main characters kind of break out, like, and react to the ridiculousness of some of their opponents, and then they go back into just fighting to protect themselves and their group.
Especially when they actually say "how bizarre," or actually when you use the word "bizarre," you're like, ah.
I'm sure, like, we all had a specific moment that popped into our heads as soon as Ryley said that. Like, and for me, it was when they first meet Rohan in part 4. And this psychopath literally eats a spider. Just why? Who knows? It's not. He does. It's not
how it tastes. Of course, he needs to write about it.
He wants to write about the spider's web, so he eats a spider. Like, why? Why would you do this?
But the fact that, like, that's the thing. Like, I think all of us who've seen part 4, and I'm sure Gio will feel the same when he watches it, is like, Rohan is like one of the best characters, and he's just awesome. But like, you meet him, and he's like, looks aspiring. He's like a freaking creep. But somehow the writing, as the story goes on, he just becomes this cool badass, and you're like, how does this happen? I don't understand how he does it, but it's just so fun. And I think one thing that certainly helped with the series is that it's almost like Araki got enough lead time to write 20 years of manga that was like perfect for the internet. Because if you'd made like an anime about this, and they did make the OVAs, right? But if you'd made like like say Berserk style, made an anime about this in the 90s that was just part 1, 2, and maybe 3, like people probably know it, but it wouldn't have maybe had the same hit. Whereas now it's like pretty much from 2012 onwards, there's like a wealth of material, and there's still like at least 2 parts they could anime more. So you'd probably get at least 10 years of like JoJo anime, and it's all on the internet, which is like, it's the perfect anime to be memed. Like, so I think it's just that great lucky confluence of all these factors have just kind of helped boost it. And of course, David Production is like a great studio to do it, as opposed to whoever did Berserk. Just like,
I think that it is really important, and it's nice that they have so much material readily available. So then you don't have that. The series doesn't fall into any stupid filler things, and the pacing, which I know that's what I say a lot, is about pacing. And the reason why I usually like to read stuff instead of watch is because there's a lot of crappy pacing in anime because they have to take up more time so they can stretch out certain chapters and certain scenes to episodes so that you don't catch up as quickly. And JoJo doesn't have to worry about that, at least not now. So they give it the amount of episodes that feels for that arc, which I really like. And so you don't have things that seem overly long, and you don't have things that seemed overly rushed either. And it's the amount of material that they're putting in to each of these seasons for each part, I believe, is something that easily, if you were looking at something like a shonen, a typical shonen ongoing series, they would have stretched out even further, and they probably also would have added a bunch of BS like filler in between. So I think that it's super successful because it's so concise. Is one of the things. Like it's not spinning its wheels ever. It's very concise because this is exactly the story that's meant to be told without any crap from another creator just trying to spin their wheels and fill time. So that, I think, it makes it very successful.
That's one of the many benefits of being divided by parts. You know, he can keep the stakes going, he can keep things fresh, he can change things up each part, and he can still bring the elements back that he wants to, which is something that he does a lot. Like, he'll ditch elements, like with Amon, like he'll ditch elements that he won't use, and then he'll just move on and have fun with whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
That's a
and I really like how I really like how like the legacy stuff works as well, in terms of like in part 3 where like Joseph uses Hamon like a little bit. Like, that was a really cool kind of throwback, and it does that great thing of like it rewards continuity, but it doesn't rely on it. So if you started with part 3, I mean, you could start with any part, but if you started with part 3 and you got to the end fight, like, if you've seen everything leading up to that point, you're like, oh my god. But at the same time, if you haven't seen anything, you still be like, oh wow, this is a really cool fight. I'm really hyped about what's happening. And I think it's that kind of like, I mean, there are some good Western comics that do it as well, where, you know, yeah, you get those cool little references, but at the same time, it's not like, well, you have to have read all this stuff to get through it. But
yeah,
although we do recommend everyone starts with part 1.
I don't think we. Yeah, part 1's really short for the anime, but I don't think we actually even, for anyone that popped in here not knowing anything about what JoJo is, we didn't really explain that, so we just kind of went straight into. But like so it's a multi-generational. Started off as a shonen series. It's now a seinen title about basically one extended family, and it's out in, what is it, the late 1800s?
Late 1800s.
Yeah, I think it's like 1890 or something like that. Yeah, or 1880, 60, something around this time.
With Jonathan Joestar. And basically, this is the initial starting conflict with the primary antagonist for a lot of the first part of the series. Not first part, but the first trio of parts is Dio. And so this initial story, it's kind of European absolute good dude versus absolute bad dude, like dude who kills your dog bad. And then it goes from there and it expands on the family. The next part is focusing on something that kind of spins out of what allowed Dio his abilities that he gains in the first part versus Joseph, which is Jonathan's grandson. And then, is that right? Is his grandson? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the next part, part 3, which is arguably the most, I don't want to say it's the most popular anymore, but it's the most well-known part. Especially since before the current animation started, focuses on Jotaro, who is the grandson to Joseph, and this introduced the concept of stands, the stands of which are basic that people will keep with them, who they stand beside them and fight alongside them, and they each have unique abilities. So each subsequent part kind of goes forward from there with the stands and different concepts that relate in a way to Dio and stuff around him. And it's ultimately it's just the idea of good versus evil. But you have these really just fantastical characters and really bizarre ideas, which is what we've been saying, that come into play in each part. Currently, we're on part 8 of this series, part 8 called JoJolion, and as of part 7, so part 7 and 8, they kind of launched into a new continuity that's separate from the first 6 parts. So just a brief rundown of everything, but each of them have similar ideas. Good guy, his crew, trying to find bad guy, and his crew. Usually they go through a gauntlet of other bad guys to get to that bad guy, and it has one overarching concept behind it, like for instance, part 4 is small town murder mystery, part 5 is gangsters in Italy, 7 is a big horse race across the US, part 8 is something no one really can tell what the fuck it's about. But yeah, it's great.
And I
So
think
you mentioned
like that, like, or sorry, like Nelson was saying, like that's one of the best things about it is the parts. I mean, even though they're all connected, each part has its own stakes, and you don't know who's going to make it through to the end. So that was one of the most shocking things for me, without spoiling anything, was that there are character deaths you don't expect because you've kind of been so trained by a lot of regular shonen manga, a lot of regular battle manga, that oh yeah, these guys are the main dudes, they'll survive. And Araki has a real habit of killing people off when you don't expect, who you don't expect, and having outcomes that you might not expect. And so I think that's really key to it, because when you start a part, you've got no idea who's going to make it to the end, what people's loyalties are going to be, how it's all going to end up, what people's end stakes are going to be, because there might be some people you think, oh yeah, I don't think they'll die, maybe they'll end up okay, and they can end up as something truly weird. As part 5 has some wild endings.
Oh yeah,
and I think yeah, and there's a lot of really good, I think, like themes as well. Particularly, I've only seen up to part 5, but I think particularly part 5 and part 4, Araki really goes in on stuff that you don't normally see in a lot of shonen or battle manga. In terms of part 4 is like where I said about a small town mystery, but it's about kind of, you know, how communities can come together to overcome evil in their own communities. And it's a testament to his writing that, like in part 4, there's just one murder in the town, and the worst thing that can happen is that he keeps getting away with murders, and somehow that feels worse and has higher stakes than Dio trying to kill, you know, the whole world in part 3. And part 5 deals a lot with the idea of fate, and where you're born, where you're going, and how you can control your own fate. So there's a lot of really good subtext in there, but there's also, as the series goes on, some really outstanding stand battles, particularly once Araki decides to get creative with the stands. And he does a good job of, it never feels like he's doing any ass pulls. Like, it always feels consistent, apart from one or two, like the star finger in part 3, which is never mentioned again. But he's generally pretty good at that. And the fact that he has parts as well means that you don't end up with like the emblematic Dragon Ball Z problem where, you know, by part 5, Jotaro needs to be taking on more and more powerful enemies, so he needs more and more powerful stand. Like, that never happens. So the shifting of the protagonists, antagonists, and settings means that the series can always remain fresh and grounded without kind of having to go over the top to keep bettering itself. And the complexity of the stands mean that the fights still get more interesting, but they don't have to get bigger and bigger like it does in Dragon Ball and other kind of battle manga.
Right. I think because with Dragon Ball, a series like that, for just to take your reference, it's more just, so you take Dragon Ball Z and the 3 main villains from the 3 overarching stories, Frieza, Cell, and Buu. Mainly the idea there is that they're more powerful one after the other. They each little things like, Frieza doesn't really have anything. He just kind of changes forms and he just gets stronger. Cell had the whole absorbing things, and then Buu absorbed things but would take on the attributes of the characters until his final form. So there's a little bit of variance, but mostly the idea is just they're stupid strong. Like, and it's just that power creep of like stronger. But in JoJo, and even if they didn't do it in like parts, and even if it was the same JoJo throughout the entire thing, each enemy is not like, it's not like Kira from 4 is stronger than Dio in 3, and it's not like Diavolo in 5 is stronger than them. They have specifically very different abilities that, even if it was the same character who's fighting against them, it wouldn't be like, oh, Goku just gets stronger every time and he goes to Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3, blue, whatever. Like, it's not that. It would be like, Jotaro defeated Dio by figuring out, basically it's a puzzle. Like, how do you defeat this power with my power? And if it was Jotaro, who does wind up, a small spoiler, being part of part 4 and being part of the final fight in there, then it's about how does he utilize his specific ability to be able to defeat that antagonist's specific ability. And if he were in part 5 and part 6, then it would again be how to manipulate what he can do with this ability to fight against that ability. And I think that's a lot of what keeps it really interesting is it's not about who's stronger. It's oftentimes about who's fighting smarter.
Yep.
Right.
And for the most part, the power levels remain the same. There are only really a couple stands that really get more powerful as time goes on.
Like Echoes in part 4 is one of those that you'll see evolve and get stronger. But it goes to show, because you have a character like God, what's his name who has Echoes?
Koichi.
Yeah. So Koichi is the typical, like, you imagine him being the weakling because he's a small guy. He's the same age. Isn't he older, I think, than Josuke?
Is he really?
No, they're in the same grade. I don't know if
I didn't know if he's like a little bit older. But like they're the same age. Josuke and Koichi are the same age, but that it's like the stature of Goku or adult Gohan against Krillin. Yet it doesn't really matter because their abilities are something that they manifest through spirit around them and whatever it is else you want to call it. So Koichi's ability is, badass. And he can, he's easily super powerful because he learns how to use it properly. It's not like, he has to keep training, but then he's going to hit that ceiling like Krillin does where he can't get any stronger because he's not a Saiyan.
Yeah, like Koichi even like stood his ground against Kira when Kira was Kira, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For a second, I thought I was missing the A at the front, but no. He stands his ground when Kira even like develops a brand new skill in the middle of their fight, and like you said, he's not a dumb kid. He's smart enough to even gain like Jotaro's respect at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So then as he grows as a person, because you see him go through a transformation. He goes from like the nerdy little kid to like still a nerdy little kid, but all of a sudden he spikes his hair up, and now he has way more confidence. And then as he gains his confidence, so does Echo gain like another form, and you have Echoes Part 1, Part 2, Part 3.
Mm-hmm. That's why I really love that, because only their brains will grow, not their physical abilities. Although I guess maybe I don't know if that would be the case. I don't know.
Well, you can even see like Okuyasu is a great example of someone having a super powerful stand, but like they're not very smart. And so like because for those unaware, his ability basically means he can just wipe stuff out of existence, which is like terrifying because it's just insanely powerful. But because he doesn't have the smarts to use it properly, it's a good way of like stopping the character from becoming OP. But it also is a great like way of showing like it's about how you think through your problems. And I think that was one of my favorite things about Part 4 is like going from Jotaro, who's kind of got a very like powerful but destructive stand, to Josuke, who his power lets him put things back together and heal people who aren't himself, means that he has to always fight alongside allies because he can't ever heal himself, but he can heal allies. So it ties into that thematic idea of friendship and community, but also provides him with some really cool opportunities. Like one of my favorite bits is he's like riding a motorcycle after a bad guy, and he's going to run into a truck, so he smashes the motorcycle. He himself flies over the truck, and then he reassembles the motorcycle and lands back on it. So it kind of lets you do these really cool kind of moments. And I think Araki is very good at setting up, at least in parts 4 and 5, as far as I'm aware, the kind of complementary villainous stand power. So I really like how the villain in part 4, his power is very much based on destruction, and Josuke's is very much based around reconstruction. And so it kind of, like, the fights underline that kind of thematic point that he's going to get to. But like Ryley said, the stand battles being so smart is a huge attraction of the series because different people use stands in different ways. Like one of the first really awesome ones in part 3 is like they're on a plane and someone on the plane has a stand. We don't know what the stand, like we don't know who they are, but their stand is like slowly ripping the tongues out of people. But they can't really just start punching everywhere because they're going to destroy the plane. So it immediately kind of sets up this like, how do you do this? Like you can't normally, like, you can't punch your way out of this problem. You have to think your way out of it. And so much of JoJo's is like your clever way of thinking outside the box will usually solve it rather than sheer destructive power, which I think is, it makes it so fun because you never know how characters are going to get out of it. sometimes it is hilariously simple how they manage to get out of it.
The sun.
And without feeling like there's a great bit where Jojo literally just bluffs his way out of a problem. It's just because he's got a great poker face.
Best fight.
Yeah, it's just great.
He
like
pokes his way out of problem, you said?
Yeah.
You're talking about the stuffed finger
it's really
gag meme?
sorry. So that's really cool, and I really like stuff like that. And Araki, again, it's called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so he's not afraid to get weird with it, like dogs, like animals having stands. The fact that he's just like stands are a thing, like they just exist. It just he doesn't set too many rules, so it never feels like he's contradicting himself. But at the same time, he does watch and make sure that there's nothing. Yeah, David says there's a fight between a dog and a parrot, and it's fantastic. There's nothing that's kind of, doesn't feel overpowered, and I don't think past part 3 there's any fight I could ever really call like truly boring. Like they're all entertaining at least in some manner, or they've got some conceit that really helps them be fun or funny in some way.
I don't know. I would say that Joseph's stand is pretty boring.
He still has some good fights though.
That's
the fight against the I don't remember who it was, like the little thing that the pimple that grew into an actual thing.
It's not. Yeah. It's the what is it like the? It's not Mariah, so it must be the princess.
Yeah, I know who you mean, but I remember reading an interview with Araki, and he said the reason he gave Joseph a support stand was because he didn't want him to emphatically didn't want him to be the main character. So he gave him a power that meant he couldn't, which makes sense, right? Because otherwise you'd just be like, no, let Joseph do more things. Whereas if it's he has to have the guys help him do stuff, then yeah. But
it forces him into the supportive role instead.
Yeah.
I was gonna say he also has a good penchant for, and I can't think of any good examples off the top of my tip of my tongue and stuff, but the taking a stand, and when they kind of introduce the idea of it, you're like, that's stupid. But then making it into something that's actually super formidable. And it reminded to me, whenever something like that does happen, when I'm like, that sounds like a really dumb idea, but then it turns out to be really difficult for them to kind of overcome. It reminds me, I don't know if any of y'all watched the show Misfits.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's a great show.
I love the first 2 seasons of that show.
the milk guy who winds up being their biggest antagonist. It's the stupidest power. He's like, oh, I can manipulate dairy, and then he winds up being the biggest threat possible. So it's that kind of thing. You have an idea that Araki will present to you, and it's it's called Misfits. It was a UK show. I don't know what channel it was on though.
It had Ramsay Bolton before he was Ramsay Bolton.
No idea.
Yeah. But it was basically
no idea.
Yeah.
It has multiple actors who wound up doing it has what's his name, Rudy Gilgun, who winds up being in Preacher. He's in there in some of the later parts. But it was 5 seasons. I think so, Alex said, the first 2 were definitely super solid. It's a really cool idea. Just there's an electrical storm that all of a sudden causes a lot of people to gain superpowered abilities, but most of the powers are really weird abilities. Mm-hmm. And the primary cast of characters are a group of 5 people who are under probation.
Yeah, they're in juvie or something, I think.
Yeah, they're in community service. Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. It's really good. I don't know where you can find it on streaming or anything. I just had to Google it back when it was coming out, and I found not so legitimate places to watch it. But it's good. But anyway, back to JoJo. He does that too. He'll introduce sometimes ideas where you have no idea how could this power actually be used. And how could this be a threat? And then it winds up coming out that way as a threat. I think one of the good examples is the lock from part 4 is an early one. That sounds like such a dumb thing, but he winds up using it. That antagonist winds up using it so effectively to really, really F with the whole everyone that he messes with.
And I think, especially when you get some of the villains, especially in part 5 when they're going up against gang members who will use stand in conjunction with each other. Like that one where it's like the guy has the power that makes you say the opposite of what you mean, and then he mixes it with the guy who has like the shark like that swims in water, and it's just like just terrifying because you've got the character saying like, "Don't go over there. The shark's over there. You're safe there," and you're just going, "Oh my god!" And so like either on their own, like, would be bad. Yeah, like they'd be bad or tough, but like together, you're just like, oh my god, I never even thought. But you're 100% right.
Yeah.
Like he does a great job of using the powers in really interesting ways that you're just like, oh shit, like that's crazy.
And he mixes it up more as he goes along. Like as you get up into part 5, he starts having like co-op battles, like 2v2 or like 2v3, or like the whole team against like one guy or something like that. Like he'll start like throwing in more things into the mix. Because in part 3, a lot of it was just 1v1. It was almost like, oh, here goes Polnareff. I wonder when he's gonna get ambushed in the toilet.
Oh my god. Part 3 did have a couple of co-op battles. You had that one when it was Joseph and Abdal versus Mariah, and she made the magnetic. And
that was hilarious.
That's probably my favorite episode of JoJo, only because I laughed so hard. It wasn't like a giggle. It was like I was wholeheartedly laughing the entire time. Because I mean, if I don't want to spoil it, it's definitely something you should experience. But it is honestly one of my favorite episodes of anime.
It is really good. I think that's like we were saying, it's part of the strength, right? Is that like they have this life or death battle, this trek to Egypt to save, Jotoro's mom. Yeah, but they still have room for like some really base level humor. It's really good.
Oh, yeah.
Like the part 4, the Italian restaurant.
Oh my god,
yeah.
Cameos.
So good.
And yeah, I love that episode is amazing. I love all those little stories. And yeah, like it's just really sweet. And I think, yeah, I don't know, like I've never met anyone that I've gotten to watch JoJo's like part 2 that has not liked it. I've got a few people I got to start and they kind of got a bit disinterested, and I was like, keep going, but it is an ask to get through. I like 4 episodes if you're not enjoying it, but I don't think there's anyone I've met who's gone part 3 plus who hasn't gone, well, okay, wow, like this is really something.
And that's the charm of it. I'll let you go, right?
I think another, and we kind of touched on it, but something that I really love about it is that it's kind of a sense of brotherhood in each, with like the characters, all the crew, the main crew, and JoJo has such a good, Araki has such a good sense of that trope where one of or a couple of the earlier characters who are kind of antagonistic wind up joining on as part of the protagonist crew. Like, in Dragon, pretty much every single one of Goku's friends used to be someone he fought. Especially a great example being Piccolo, Vegeta, and stuff like that. But they gain that brotherhood, and every single part of JoJo kind of has that same idea where someone that Jotaro fights against Kakyoin and Polnareff at the beginning of the series, and they wind up being his brothers. And then the same you can say for part 4, you have fights off against God, what's his name? Yeah, I like didn't want to butcher the name. Okuyasu in the beginning, and then they wind up being like absolute best friends throughout it. And it's kind of the same thing. And Rohan as well. Like Rohan is introduced as kind of a antagonist, but winds up being one of the coolest protagonists. And this happens throughout, like, part 5 you have with Giorno and his mom, and then you have, and by mom, you know who I mean. And then in part 6, it's the same way. You have Jolene and like different people that she meets inside of Green Dolphin Prison. And then part 7, it's people that there's a couple of the crew's not as big, but it's like people that Johnny meets while they're in the race. And then part 8, I don't really know what the fuck's going on, so I can't really say. But it's that sense of brother, like really something that gives, I think gives it a lot of life and a lot of what I love about it, because I love seeing those friendships, and it's like the biggest laughable shonen trope is like the power of friendship and stuff. But I mean, god damn it, if I don't respect the power of like our friendship here, us guys, like we're constantly talking to each other on messages and like laughing with each other. I'm like sharing pictures with you guys, and it's something that like that those bonds are what get me through my day, my week, my entire life, are the bonds that I have with my friends. And that's the type of thing that I really love that Araki pushes forward, is the bonds that these guys have and how important they are to each other. And it also ups the emotion when one of them is hurt or even gets killed in action, because you know how much these guys mean to each other. So I absolutely love it. I think that part 4, if I'm being honest, part 4 is probably the best of them as far as making it feel like these guys are really, really friends. And I think it's because it takes place with that setting where you do have them going in and out of class together sometimes, where they're spending their own time together. They're not out there only spending time together when they're trying to beat, you know, a serial killer. They're actually going to class together, and they're actually going out to eat together and do stuff like that. And then even God, I can't remember her name, but who winds up having a crush on what's his name?
Koichi.
Koichi.
Like she winds up playing a big part in it too. And I absolutely loved the feeling that had, because it felt like they were real in that point. You know, they were real teenagers who looked like grown ass men, but they were real students and they had real interactions.
And they acted
so I
like
absolutely love that part of it.
Yeah, and look, I think you're 100% right there, right? And I think I can't remember when I shared it or a while ago, but I remember I read an article about, it was kind of looking at toxic masculinity, and it kind of just dawned on me that JoJo's is like, it's one of the best anime manga to kind of, I don't know, push back against what you would consider like toxic masculinity, because especially here in the West, I think there's a very big stigma about, especially as men, kind of showing affection for your friends and your family and your loved ones. And I think that's what's kind of, you know, so heartwarming about JoJo, is that it's so, like, it's straight up sincere. Like, it's not sappy. Like, Jotaro is like, I don't think Jotaro ever tells anyone that, like, he cares for them in part 3 almost. But yeah, but like the skill of Araki's writing and the way he's able to kind of convey those emotions through like non-verbal means, you still get that sense that these guys are all, you know, like they just love being together. They love being friends. And you're right, it's extremely evocative of, you know, everybody has a group of friends, whether it's, you know, like us, you know, being, you know, online together and just talking shit, or you've got your friends, you know, that you might have from school or work, kind of just that great hangout vibe. But it's a hangout vibe, but you all know that like you're all kind of dear to each other and you all care about each other and you're there to help each other. And I think JoJo is able to kind of balance that kind of sincerity without being overtly cheesy, which is like, you know, like you said, it is the most shonen thing ever to be like the power of friendship. But a lot of shonen or a lot of lesser manga can kind of fall into those traps and not express it as well or succinctly or articulately. Whereas JoJo is able to kind of communicate those ideals of friendship and brotherhood and sticking by your mates, as we would say in Australia. It's all about mateship. And it's able to convey that really well, that it feels natural and organic. And because of that, it's very evocative of your own real life friendships. And I think it's that kind of that positive feedback loop. You just kind of get stuck into it, because you're right. Like with part 4, like when you talk about them, you know, going to class and hanging out, like it would be impossible for me not to think about myself, you know, going to high school and the friends, you know, I've had then and things like that. And so I think it's kind of got almost like, I don't even know if it's intentional because it might depend on the age you're reading it, but it's got that almost nostalgic quality to it in some of those. And because it's so evocative of all those friendships that you've had in real life, that, you know, like at the end of part 3, I wanted to be like, all right, guys, like, you know, we're meeting in Japan and we're going to Egypt because, you know, why not? You just want to do
OTAKUBROS, take Egypt.
Let's just drop school and save our friend's mom.
Yeah, it's bros before Dios, man. Bros before Dios.
One of the best things that illustrates exactly what you're talking about is, and I'm going to bring it back to that poker fight again, he basically puts all of his friends' lives on the line. And even his friend who's not even there to consent because he knows that he would, and he puts everybody's life on the line on that hand. and he just lets it sit there. And that to me is just such a powerful moment. And it's just ridiculous. Like, you can't help but laugh, but it really is a powerful moment. He just basically puts everybody's life on the line, and they have enough trust in him for him to do that.
Right, and that's that's
okay. So I watched this video. I think it was Super Eye Patch Wolf a couple months ago, and the title was basically "The Power of Friendship Done Right," and it talked all about how in Hunter x Hunter you had Gon and Killua doing things that would seem almost impossible for kids their age, and it's obviously because they've been studying men and stuff like that. But not just that, it goes specifically speaking about the ending of Hunter x Hunter and how Killua goes through just like the impossible to try to help his friend with his little sister. So it's basically saying that the power of friendship isn't necessarily like in Dragon Ball. You see Krillin gets killed, so the power of friendship, he gets stronger, defeats Frieza. In Jojo, just like in Hunter x Hunter, the power of friendship done right is basically Jotaro and Josuke teaming up to fight a rat. It's them watching each other's back and using their best parts together to get to their end goal. So it's not getting a huge boost when your buddy dies. It's not just in Dragon Ball, they do the fusion hot dance, and then all of a sudden they're 2 times stronger, even though they're both at their peak. But all of a sudden they're at full strength because now they're Gogeta, and that's how the plot goes. It's more of Jotaro using, he sees all his friends be defeated by Dio in front of him. All his buddies that he's been on the road with for all these months and that have helped him save his mom or attempting to save his mom. And he, like you said, when he's going against Darby, he doesn't even ask them, hey, I'm going to risk your life. He doesn't ask them, hey, is it okay if I bet your life in this game? He just kind of says, hey, guys, just trust me. And none of them, bat an eye. They're just kind of like, okay, Jotaro's got this. Let's give him a space. And basically what I'm saying is this is camaraderie, power of friendship, romance done right all throughout, every season of JoJo.
Yeah. I think also... to spin off of one of the Alex mentioned the masculinity, toxic masculinity, and how well JoJo's goes against that. That's another really important part, I think, about why this series has become so popular, and it's part of what makes it different and weird. But in this year of 2019, going into 2020, and I know that these things were written a while ago, but it almost seems like this is written perfectly to be out right now. Starting from part 5, the way that these characters present themselves, they're not anything but they're men. They're masculine. They're strong for any idea of the term of masculinity, but they present themselves with no qualm about coming out as very feminine in their appearance. You have guys who wear, basically, I don't know if they're supposed to be actually wearing it or just look like it, but who wear lipstick, who have very feminine hairdos, that have very revealing clothes, that reveal their midriff or their chest and stuff like that. It's just part of character design, basically, from that part forward. It gets more and more and more kind of gender fluid in the way that these guys and some of the girls are dressing. And I think that that's really awesome in a way to combat against the idea of toxic masculinity. I know that Araki has said stuff about it. I can't quote him on anything exactly, but he has talked about, doing that. And I love it. I absolutely love it, because masculinity has never been a thing that really came to me as being important. I was always the one who in theater in school, I was always playfully cross-dressing and stuff, and taking on female roles whenever doing stuff on stage. And I enjoy all types of things that most guys would be like, why do you enjoy this show, or why do you enjoy this singer, or why do you enjoy this thing? The idea of you're a dude, you shouldn't enjoy these girly things, or I wear pink shirts. I since I was in high school, I had pink shirts. I had one pink shirt that I would wear sparingly because people would say something like, it's a pink freaking shirt. They would still give me grief about it. And so it's never been a thing that I really paid attention to, because I would always tell people, I don't care, because I'm confident in my own masculinity. My masculinity is not about being this buff guy that, likes to chew jerky and shoot people in the face. Like I don't have guns on my arms and guns in my hands. Like I'm the guy who is always telling my friends outright, spilling my heart, how I feel about them. That was more important about what made me a man, so to say. And I think that JoJo's does a great job of tossing masculinity out the window and all those conventional ideas of masculinity, and giving you these brightly colored effeminate guys who no one is ever going to dispute their masculinity. And I absolutely love it for that.
Yeah, and I think like Bruno from Part 5, who's kind of like the mafia boss, and he runs like the gang that's the focal point for Part 5, is like it's great because, like you say, he wears like an open cut shirt, and he's got like like a kind of bowl hairstyle, and like they all do the kind of JoJo's poses, which are all ripped from high-end fashion magazines. But at the same time, it's like what makes him him, and how he defines his own masculinity is like his care for his friends. He wants to take care of his gang members. He wants them to get a better future, and he stands by his principles. And so the way they all dress is just like it's a function of expressing their personalities. But it's never, yes, there's Bruno. It's never called into question about that their work is less, or that their integrity is ever in doubt because they dress in a particularly feminine way or have anything that's less than traditionally masculine, which I think is especially good in media, because you get a lot in media of female coded or feminine coded men are typically viewed as trustworthy or things like that, because again, there's a whole thing about women don't fight with men's tools, they poison you and trick you and things like that. So men who do that kind of thing must be sneaky and more feminine, therefore worse. And you're right, JoJo's just these are these guys, this is just how they dress. They're in Italy, they love high-end fashion, whatever, that's just who they are. And I think it's just really refreshing, I think, as well, in a lot of media, not just anime and manga, is the freshness of Araki's designs, and I would almost say his fearlessness to just kind of do, he just does whatever he wants. And if it feels like it's right for the character, it works. But he always lets those fashions and those looks, they're integral to the look and the feel of the series, but they never kind of define the characters. And I think that's really important, and it certainly draws a lot of fans, because if you're a fan of JoJo, you'll probably find a character who will dress to some kind of standard that you like whether you want to dress outrageously or whether you want to be a bit more conservative, or you can be like old man Joseph, Indiana Jones style, with a hat and a jacket. There's a character that you can probably see yourself reflected in, and I think that's that's always important in media. But yeah, it really does feel, it always struck me that even though it's older than me, when it was written, I think it started being written about a year before I was born, it's somehow really feels really modern and really fresh, and like you said, perfectly suited to the now, which is, I guess, a testament to Araki's writing style and his authorship, is that it does hold up so well so many years later.
Definitely.
When did the series start? The manga, when did it?
1988, 87 maybe?
It's 88.
Wow. Okay. It's older. It's older than me. That's interesting.
One cool thing is how you're skipping. So, Golden Wind Part 5 takes place in 2001. Do we know when it was being written? Off the top of your head,
I think it was late 90s, because I think Part 4 was here we go. Golden Wind was 1995 to 1999. Phantom Blast in 1987.
That's really interesting, considering there weren't really any cell phones. Well, no, there were cell phones in Part 5. Never mind.
Yeah, but it's crazy. You think about it. Stardust Crusaders Part 3 ended in 1992. So
wow.
Yeah, that's so old, but when you watch it, I mean, like, again, testament to David Production. They did a great job. Like, it feels like fresh and modern, and more modern than so many other things, because it's just so unique. And I guess, like, if you ever want to be a creator, I think it's a great example of just write something or draw something that you want to see. Because if you were chasing the trends, like Araki was chasing trends, he would have ended up with, Fist of the North Star clones, which you can see its influence in part one, but like, it wouldn't have been anything like what JoJo's turned out to be. He just wrote what he wanted to see, which was, like, wholesome bros in high-end fashion fighting with ghosts. And it sounds insane, but like, look how many people like it, right? Like, you won't know until you give it a shot. So I definitely think he's one of the finest examples of kind of, if you ever want to write something, just back yourself, because you never know how many people it might touch or reach out to or speak to in ways that you never even intended.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that he never has really held back, and especially when going towards the most recent parts where he decided to just kind of restart the timeline into a new alternate JoJo universe, basically, and completely moved it from being a shonen title to being a seinen title. He's, Araki just does really seem like he's doing what he wants with the title. He's doing what he wants with the series because it's his series, and he's gained so much momentum behind it and so much notoriety behind it that I don't think anyone would tell him no anyway.
Yeah, he's definitely up there with Togashi and Oda, where it's like Oda can take a month's break, and I'm sure nobody at Shonen Jump is saying, "What do you mean you want to take a month's break?" Like, your fans will be there when you come back, and that's why Togashi's also allowed to take these massive hiatuses. Like, he'll release one volume a year.
Yeah.
And as soon as that volume comes out, it's sold out in stores. Like, and Togashi has just built this clout around him where it's like when part 6 ended, the way part 6 ends, people weren't really sure what was next in the JoJo timeline. They were like, is there going to be a part 7? Are we going to get something brand new from Araki? Like, what is happening? He didn't answer any questions. And I remember one of the first things when I first got into JoJo, so I was reading like a breakdown of what parts were, and I just was like, who does this? Why would anybody do this? And one of the things one of the articles said was part 6 ended. People were like, what's next? What's Araki gonna do now? And then Steel Ball Run began with simply the name Steel Ball Run, not JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Steel Ball Run. And for the first couple chapters, first couple months, you don't even get to meet your actual JoJo. You're following in the perspective of Gogo Sapelli, Hiro Sapelli, which I think is great. And again, this is him doing what he wants. He's like, hey guys, you expect JoJo, but really it's me. Like one of the main characters, from part 1, and he's completely reimagined with a similar but very different set of skills. Yeah, it's actually not even similar at all. It's you're going from kung fu, like Sunshine Kung Fu magic, to whatever spinning thing it is that he does, which is, again, just Araki doing whatever he feels like doing. He's like, this is my universe. You guys are just along for the ride.
And it's such genius work. Like, I've offhandedly mentioned like the kind of WTF nature of part 8, but even then, like, I know whenever I was reading it and I was commenting in our chat about it, like, I was like, I don't know what's happening right now, like what's going on. And then once I got like caught up, I was like, I think I get it. Like, I think I got what's happening. I know what's going on. But it's just Araki again. Like, he just, like you said, he's doing what he wants. He's taking you along for the ride with him, and he's got almost. It kind of makes me think of the way that you guys, especially Alex, have been about Death Stranding and following Kojima as a person. It's like, I don't give a fuck what this is. Like, I'm going to experience it. And I know that in one realm or another, I'm going to enjoy this. And that's kind of what you get with the cult of Araki. It's like, he could do whatever he wanted, and we would all still be there to follow it. And we don't know like what it's going to be or how it's going to be, but we'll probably enjoying it in one way or another. So it's similar idea there, and that's where I kind of am with part 8 on the series. Like, it's just, I think part 8 is the most bizarre of the bizarre adventures. It's truly something else, and I think it's all of the best and all of the craziest things that Araki has done being just shoved into one ball of what, and then just kind of leaving you to figure out what everything means, because it doesn't follow the same tropes as all the previous parts, which I think is cool, because it's like he's given you 7 pieces of this story that can follow basically the same structure and the same ideas and the same beats, and now he's giving you something completely different that like doesn't have an antagonist. It doesn't really have a clear plot line. It's just loosely, little things, little threats that you're kind of learning. It's, in general, a giant mystery. It's like it's a very Twin Peaks type of thing, where you're like really confused as to what's really going on, and eventually you're going to figure it out, but you have to watch a midget walking backwards first, and then you'll get it.
Okay.
But yeah,
I think that's the thing as well with Araki's authorship, is that you can trust him to do it, because you might think, like you said, it's really confusing, but it's really hard to do a narrative that's confusing that is also involving and gripping, because I know I've tried to read or watch so many books or movies that just start out and they're confusing and boring, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever, like I'm not even going to bother with this. Whereas if you have something that you don't really understand, or you might not know where it's going, but you're like, well, I trust you to take this through, Araki, like you've shown me before. I think that really does stand as a testament to his skill. And I think also the other thing we haven't mentioned was his art style, how his art style changes so much from the start till present day, but it's somehow, except when he draws older characters with his current art style, it still weirds me out a little bit. But it still kind of feels like part of the same kind of part of the same spectrum, just along a scale. I think how his art style changes to suit his stories better as well is really good, because like God knows the start of part 4 where he's got like hugely buff Josuke just like freaks me the hell out. Whereas when Josuke finally goes to kind of like his normal look, as it were, it feels much more comfortable to me. But I think, yeah, like the fact that he can kind of change so much, like I can't think of any other manga artist who really changes their style that much in an ongoing series. Like you've got people like Kento Miura, like who does Berserk, like he gets really good, but it's kind of just a refinement and bettering of his original style. Whereas Araki goes from like, super buff dudes to like really kind of, contorted, not spindly, but like lean dudes who are, bending and posing in weird ways with crazy outlandish fashions. And yeah, it's kind of insane that he starts here and he ends up here, but yeah, it all makes sense in the same way.
And it's not just in the way that he draws like the physique of these characters, but his style in its entirety. If you look at it from part 1 to, like, if you were to open up like one of the hardcovers of part 1, for instance, and just not the cover art, but look at just the interior artwork and compare the interior artwork to something from part 8, or even, if you'll excuse my body for a second, but even looking at and Alex has this as well, but the interior work of Rohan at the Louvre, like, difference. It's not just the physique of these characters, but just the amount of detail and the type of detail he puts in this artwork is just incredible. And he's evolved over time so much in such a positive way. And he just keeps, like, every part of the series, he just keeps moving forward in his abilities as an artist and gets more creative and daring wooing. And it's, I think it's because he pushes himself, because of the creativity behind these characters and these abilities. He forces himself to be pushed to be a better artist and to do more daring things with his art throughout the series.
Yeah, and I think for fun as well, it's also worth mentioning he's actually a bit of a meme in Japan because he doesn't age. He's like he's like Kojima but like on steroids. Like look at him now and he looks the same as he did like 30 years ago. Like it's quite outstanding. But he seems to live a very wholesome life where it's like he says he just does lots of exercise and then goes home and draws and like he's happy, like that's really nice. But yeah, like it's crazy. If you ever want to freak yourself out, look how much he's aged in the last 20 years. It's like Keanu Reeves, but somehow like not at all.
So what are y'all's favorites?
Favorite what?
Everything. So what's your favorite part, favorite JoJo, and favorite antagonist?
Part 4, Josuke, and you gotta give it to Dio. As much as Diavolo is cool and his power just works, and Kira is terrifying on a small scale. Like Dio never really scares you, but Kira really makes you think, holy crap, what is this man capable of? Dio is the ultimate, like he just keeps coming back, and without going into too much detail, like you can feel Dio's presence in pretty much every part. Every part relates some way back to Dio, except maybe part 4. But you wouldn't have part 4 without part 3, and Dio is like the main antagonist in part 3. You feel his presence in part 6. You have his offspring in part 5. So it just Ryley cut out, but yeah, Dio is definitely my favorite bad guy. What about you, Alex?
I think part 4, having only done up to 5, I think part 4 is still my favorite as a whole because it's just a fantastic combination of everything. Like all the stands are better. They carry over a lot of the good elements from 3, and we get like Jotaro to be there and do some cool stuff as well. So it's kind of like having your JoJo protagonist cake and eating it too. Like you get to have Jotaro and Josuke in the same story. The stand battles are really good. The weight build is really good. Kira is like you said, he's just absolutely like terrifying, fantastic antagonist. So I think part 4 is probably my favorite part overall. And especially like the anime. I love how the anime for part 4 plays with the palettes, like the color palettes, making the sky kind of pink and yellow, the grass like weird colors. I think that really helps kind of sell the reality of like you're in a weird little town. And I think it speaks to anyone who's just grown up like in a town and has a community of friends. Like it's just really evocative of that. So I think part 4 is definitely my favorite. Dio has to be my favorite villain just because he's just so flamboyant and hilarious and like menacing. And it's just like Kira is probably a better villain, but Dio's just hard. You just can't go past him because he's just so much fun, and he's like you love to hate him. And he hates everybody, and it's just like you just can't describe like why he's so good, but he's just the best. My favorite JoJo is so hard though because I'm always flipping up between like Jotaro and Josuke, but like I don't know, like I guess like I gave Josuke's part the win, so I'll say Jotaro is probably my favorite just because he's so iconic. Like he might lack a little bit of the nuance of later characters, but I feel like he benefits from maybe being around potentially the longest, so that he kind of gets shaded in a little bit. But I'm a sucker for kind of like stoic badass types, but like he also cares for his friends. And he gets a cool long coat. He gets to do like the pointing thing. Like it's really really hard not to like him. And just kind of you're like, damn, like I want to be that guy. Whereas Josuke is like you're like, oh, I am that guy, but Jotaro is like I want to be that guy. Yeah, and you can see like he's just awesome. So I think it's kind of like the Dio Jotaro, like you can't have one without the other. But I think Josuke's Josuke and his part is probably my favorite overall story.
Nice.
All right, Nelson.
My favorite part is 5 actually.
Yes.
And that is because, and I mean, we've discussed this at length, but it's because it's the best combination, I think, of all the parts up to this, except maybe 1 and 2, obviously. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you've got the whole, not so much the road trip, but they're still moving across Italy. They're still kind of moving from place to place. They've got a specific mission. So it has that part 3 feel, But then it still has that Part 5 feel in the sense that, well, for one, the color palettes are similar. They're not as inverted as Part 4, but they're still kind of similar. So the vibe is still a little like that. And then it still got like that brotherhood vibe that was so present in Part 3 and 4, really. So that's got to be my favorite part. My favorite JoJo is tough because I like Giorno a lot. I think Giorno just has like such a pure heart that it's hard not to like him. But Jotaro, like just his poker face and the fact that that's just such a defining trait that just his poker face in general, I think adds a lot of subtlety to his character that I feel like a lot of people might not see. I mean, you kind of see it more in Part 4, but even in Part 3, it was there, and I feel like a lot of people probably missed out on that. Favorite villain is Dio. I don't got anything more to say about that.
Who'd you say it was?
He's just too good. He's too good. He's like one of the best villains in anything, really.
You said Dio as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think everyone.
I definitely feel.
So far.
Yeah, he's like the Joker to like Jotaro's Batman. Like like there might be villains that can be more interesting or even potentially like written better or more scary, but he's just like he's the iconic one. And if you had to pick one, you'd pick Dio.
Yeah. Well, again, like I'm gonna reverberate what I said without spoiling much. It's he isn't just he's not just a Joker to Batman. He's like, I don't know if there's anybody that's like that carries over to the rest of the Bat family as well, because Dio does span literally generations of Joestars, and he harasses them all. And even when Dio's gone, they're still being harassed by his memory in some sort of way, which again just makes him like you love to hate him, but you love that you hate him. You know.
Yeah.
Ryley, who is your favorite?
Okay, so I want to be fair and like not seem like I'm choosing things that not everyone has experienced, but like if I was to choose a part that's been adapted to anime, it's going to be between 3 and 5. And I love 4, but 3, I have that, that nostalgia because it was the first one that I experienced, and it's kind of the one that set my enjoyment of the entire series up. But 5, pretty much for everything was saying, and it's so creative in what they do, and I love the group of protagonists. I think there's a ton of fascinating antagonists as well. I love the style behind it. I remember starting the first couple episodes, and I mentioned it in our chat. I was like, this might wind up being my favorite part, because I had just finished 4, and I was like, I really like 4, but I have these qualms, and I like talked about what my issues with 4 were, but I was like, this kind of took it back to that same feeling that I had with 3, but is kind of going in a further direction with it. So that's why I would say those two. But Part 7, like there's so many people that will tell you Part 7 is the best part, and I honestly, it's hard for me to disagree with that. And I am very excited for everyone to eventually experience Part 7 because it's just so dang good. It took a minute for me to get into it. It took a couple volumes of reading, but once I got into it, it's like crap. Like just all of the ideas coming together and all of the characters, like it's a lot less focused. It starts deviating from the norm is what really made it cool. And it's this much larger, higher concept idea behind it that just made it into something interesting. But I'll talk about that in a second more. Now, the one thing that makes Part 7 weaker is that the JoJo is not the best. Like Johnny is a lot more interesting than Jonathan is, because he's not just this morally perfect Superman that Jonathan was, where it's kind of boring. Like he's got more interesting stuff behind him, but unfortunately his stand is not the most interesting stand ever. It works for what it needs to work, but he gets outshined by, like Adonis said, like it's really Euro's story. A lot of it is, and he's outshone by that character. So my favorite JoJo winds up probably being Josuke, because he really starts that trend where Araki is not any longer focusing on like part 4 is where the trend of masculinity starts moving away from the typical, and you have Joseph, who's this guy he's big, he's muscular, he's a strong dude, he's popular with the ladies and stuff like that, but everything about him has that like the brighter colors, the heart motif everywhere. He cares about his hair above like anything else. And anyone who knows me knows I have a weakness for any like of those high school badass dudes with pompadours, and that's where Josuke falls into that. So I love, like, my background on my phone for probably over a year was a edit of Josuke. I freaking love him. My favorite villain would probably be in part 7, but if I'm not talking about part 7, my favorite villain is Kira, because I think that it's so much more frightening. This focused aggression that he has, and it's because he's this weird fetishist serial killer whose motivation is just that he wants to get away with, because his whole thing throughout the series, once you start getting to introduce to him in part 4, is I just want to live a quiet life. But his quiet life consists of also being able to kill people when he wants to. So it's this really fascinatingly frightening idea of this guy who his idea of a quiet life is being a serial killer and getting away with it, and he doesn't care. He does not care if he has to murder a child to do it. Like he will do whatever he has to try and stay quiet. And it's not until he starts being figured out that people start realizing who he is that he really starts to lose it, and he loses his cool and stuff, and it turns into a real cat and mouse game throughout the part. I absolutely love Kira because he's frighteningly real, especially like in a time like now when we have not just like because of things that happened in 2019, but because of the focus in the last few years that we have in media on like following serial killers, and you have things like Mindhunter, which give us degenerates that like stuff like that the idea of looking into the head of these people. And I think that Araki did a great job of creating a very realistic serial killer villain who's also extremely anime at the same time, and it's fantastic. But part 7's villain, Funny Valentine, is basically anime Donald Trump, and it's ridiculous and amazing and perfect in every way to read this right now and to see this character and how he acts and how it's like, holy crap. Like I honestly, with Araki does and the way that his series like fits so well with today's culture, and like the anime coming out right now seems timed so perfect. I think that he's with Matt Groening as a time traveler in creating stuff.
Just going to say that he's already a vampire. He might as well be from the future as well.
I think it's like, and whereas like with The Simpsons, Matt Groening makes things where you're like, oh shit, like he was predicting stuff from the future. Like Araki is making things that aesthetically and stuff like, and the content seems like it's just modern, that it happened, like that he just wrote this series right now, when it's not. Like it's from, started in the 80s. Part 7 started in the early 2000s, the early noughts. Like, yet it feels like something that would be a social commentary on the current American political climate. And it's just, it blows me away. And on top of that, not just the way that the villain fits so perfectly as a kind of a nod at what we have going on in the States right now, but his ability is just so out there and interesting. And it's one of those abilities that it kind of is one that I almost had that impression of like, okay, that's kind of a weird, like, I don't see how that could be a useful ability, but it goes into being like super insane. Like the way that it's used and the things that they have to do to kind of fight against it. And it just goes into, I know Adonis has read part 6 and the end of part 6, and it just kind of like gets really crazy in the end. Like this kind of goes even further in how crazy it gets, and but it does so in a way that I think works even better. And it, oh my god, I like everyone just needs to experience it. Funny Valentine is just a fantastic, like I've been looking for a really good Funny Valentine shirt with D4C on it, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, because it's so, oh my god, he's so good. He's so horribly, disgustingly good.
So the reason, a big part why I got pushed away a little bit from finishing part 7, I mean, was because I was in a JoJo group and I was just there for the memes, because you know you just crave more memes once you get your first whip. And somebody just flat out, like, they just made a full ass post about Funny Valentine's ability. I don't know how it's gonna end, but I know his ability. But now I'm starting to think that the way you just described it, that the post was not being serious, or I didn't read it correctly, because they made him sound very OP in that one post.
It's pretty OP, but it's one of those things, like the initial idea of his ability, which is kind of folding things into each other. That's how it's introduced. Oh, it's like he folds something into something.
Yeah.
And then it develops. So it's one of those, the first impression you get of his ability, you're just like, okay, what? Like, how is he the main antagonist? And then it just goes from there. So I don't want to spoil like what for other people, what his ability winds up being, but it's one of those kind of evolving things, and it makes him into a hugely formidable foe and one of the most interesting villains, period. And I absolutely adore him. And I'm also fascinated by the fact that he's introduced as this little portly pig-looking dude, and then all of a sudden, out of freaking nowhere, he takes his shirt off and he's just buff as shit. Like, it's like
Doppio.
Yeah, but it's like he's fat. Like, he's fat. He's a fat dude.
Oh, like
okay.
the old man from Dr. Stone.
Yeah.
It's like, so you look at him, like the initial times you're introduced to him, he's like dressed in his full attire, and he's got the stupid curled hair, and he's like got this fat face, and his collar is up here, and he looks fat. Like, not to be disrespectful, but you know, he looks like he's thick with like 4 C's. And when he gets to like a point in the series, he removes his clothes and he's jacked shit. Like, he's more muscular than any of the protagonists. Like, he's jacked. And I'm like, what happened? How did this guy, like, how is this the same guy? Like, he goes from, I have a background. I don't have it on my phone right now, but I have a background of him, like, with his back. It's like facing his back, and he's like stupid, sexy Flanders. Like, it's bizarre. Like, I have to find pictures real quick for y'all, but someone else talk while I find these pictures.
Yeah, who's your favorite JoJo so far?
I don't really have a favorite. I'm not too into, like, I'm not into the series like in depth as you guys. I've only watched the first 3 parts in the anime. I like everybody. I'll just say that. I like everybody.
Oh, you're too nice, Tio. You're too nice. That's very on brand.
I really did like Iggy, simply because I love dogs. So he was my soul animal, if you will.
Okay, let me show this. Let me show this real quick. Okay, so here's Funny Valentine from earlier. I know it's like kind of looks crappy on the screen here, but yeah, you can see his cheeks. Like, he's a thick dude. And then this is from later in the series.
Damn.
So this is literally later in the series. Let me find my background. I'll show you guys my background as well that I had on my phone. But it's like, I literally, as I was reading it, I had to go back and forth between like stuff, and I was like, wait, I'm not just imagining things. This guy used to be like thick as shit, right? And then
you said thick.
Oh man, I think I deleted the picture that I had on here. I'm gonna have to find it. Let me find it. Y'all keep going.
This is totally unrelated, but I wanted to highlight it. David mentioned this, and I thought it was pretty cool. The two characters are both part of the Jump Superstars DS game, and I wanted to ask you guys if you played that game, because I haven't.
I did not, but I did play the one on the PS3. There's a PS3, it's like Jump All Stars, and you only get access to Joseph and Jonathan though, so it's not too fun.
Okay, this picture did not look like I thought it looked, but this was my background on. I can't even show anyone this. It looks
too
terrible.
bright.
It's too bright.
Let me see. Maybe this will fix it.
There
yeah.
So much better.
So that was my background. To see Valentine, but here's the image that shows up all the time because this dude has the American flag scarred into his back.
Oh my god!
But look how freaking jacked he is.
Wow.
And like coming from the doughboy from the beginning of the series to turn into that, like, sorry, that's one of the biggest spoilers of part 7 is that Valentine is jacked.
That's honestly one of those things that you know how people are always talking about Araki forgets, like Araki forgets about the man that inspired Josuke. Araki forgot to write this person. Araki definitely changed. No, he definitely changed his mind halfway through Steel Ball Run and thought, let's just weird everybody out and make this dude like jacked. That like, I can totally see him like waking up in the middle of the night, just like jot this down.
I think that the if I had to say it, there's probably an idea of how like he could have narratively how it could be a true thing, but it's just you're introduced to him and I'm like early in the series you're like, this is the antagonist of part 7. He's this little roly-poly like doughboy, like what? But he's like he's this kind of really like he comes off as a terrible like antagonistic politician type character. And he comes off as this like, this just, what you expect from the kind of, dictators that you'll see on the news today. And I'm not talking about any one in particular, but there, a few that have that same type of body that are in different countries. And you get that vibe from him and it's so well written. And then all of a sudden in one chapter, like, something happens and he winds up getting naked and you're like, whoa, what? Like, is this really the same dude? Like what's going on? And he turns from being, Kim Jong-un to being Vladimir Putin. So it's
is Vladimir Putin like jacked? Is that a fact?
On a horse. Like you haven't seen that picture of him like shirtless on a horse?
Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, you should go seek it out. But I gotta go, guys. I've overstayed my welcome according to my wife. So
all right.
I'm very thankful that we got to do this.
Yeah, we can wrap it up. It's been more than an hour. I loved having all of you guys talking about the series. Unfortunately, I can't really chime in because I only know just a little bit and I don't have like full opinions on all the characters and all that stuff, but I will eventually. So we'll do a part 2.
Sorry, we can have part 2.
Yeah.
I know if anything from tonight's hour and a half that Gio's going to leave here wanting to go even harder into it and getting caught up with everyone else.
Yeah. I mean,
I promised you I would stop harassing him, so I can't pressure him anymore.
I am waiting to see if I can snag the first half of part 4, the Blu-rays, on Black Friday to see if somebody puts it up on discount somewhere online. So nice. Yeah, we'll see what happens. So thank you everybody for tuning in. That you have been a wonderful audience for sticking around for an hour and a half of nothing but JoJo goodness. Thank you so very much for all the likes and follows. And yeah, you guys are the best as always. If you want JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, there is a place that you can visit where you can get that manga sweetness, and that is instocktrades.com, where you can get your collected editions and manga up to 50% off. Loyalty discounts tack on an extra 2% at that. And if you order $50 or more in your collected editions order, you get free shipping. Also, fantastic customer service and wonderful packaging that you can only get by visiting instocktrades.com. So that's it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I don't know if you guys want to plug anything before we leave. If you have a channel, if you have a thing, I know Nelson, I'm a big fan, and I want you to do more videos. You can follow him at Sequential Consequence. And yeah, you guys want to plug anything before we wrap it up?
I just want to say one thing before we go. The Jojo game is actually on sale on the PSN store for $12.
Oh yeah,
really cheap.
Yep,
and it comes with some DLC too.
But it's full of spoilers.
I know, so that's why I didn't get it yet. I
Heaven.
downloaded the demo, and that was already treading on some tricky ground. Because everybody comes back to life, so they're like, oh yeah, this person died. So now they're back to life.
Okay.
All right.
The only thing I want to plug is just nothing plugging, so to speak. But if after all this you're like, shit, I do want to watch JoJo's, so you can watch it on Crunchyroll. That has all of it subbed. I'm not too sure about the US. In Australia, that's the only place you can watch it. But I'm fairly sure it's a bit all over the place in maybe Netflix in some countries. And then obviously you can buy the Blu-rays as well. It's because it's getting quite popular now. There's Australian Region B Blu-rays, Region A Blu-rays. So if you want to watch it, there's that option. And obviously, if you want to buy it, if you live in the US, you can buy from In Stock Trades. Otherwise, you can also buy from them. So yeah, why not?
All right. Ryley, you're the one that does manga videos with me. Where can people find you?
You can find me right here on this channel, Omnibroslive, the Omnibros Network. You can find me on my channel, Ryleymo, RYLEYMO. I have some reviews that are in the pipeline. I uploaded semi-recently a review of a few different new releases that I enjoyed. Levius hardcover, the first volume of Way of the House Husband, and the Cats of the Louvre by Taiyo Matsumoto hardcover. I have a couple more full series reviews that I really want to upload soon. And aside from that, some haul videos. Geo had the great idea that I should unbox a free $25.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was Adonis. It was Adonis.
Yep.
You guys, okay, right now, honestly, I get both of y'all's pictures confused.
Me too.
It's the beards.
I don't really know why I get your pictures, like your profile pictures, confused too. And so on the chat, sometimes I have to be like, wait, which one of these guys said that? So Adonis said that I should do an unboxing video because I got a free $25 crate mystery box dealie. So I'm going to do something like that. I don't know, but you can catch me in places and other things, and I like to do stuff sometimes too.
All right. And one last question before we go. Unfortunately, we cannot do Q&A. I'm so sorry about that, chat, but I do want to implement more manga episodes instead of like the 2 a month. So we'll see if we can work that out, because waiting to do more episodes can be a little bit... I get anxious waiting for the opportunity to talk about anime and manga on this channel.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can do that and feature more guests and all that fun stuff. But somebody in the chat, Nman40, he wanted a quick opinion on just a brief sentence on 7 Deadly Sins and Soul Eater manga from anybody in the chat and anybody of you guys that wants to chime in.
So it looks like Alex died. His laptop battery died. So he's out. I guess 7 Deadly Sins. It's I just recently caught up with the anime. I haven't watched season 3. It has not been uploaded to Netflix just yet for some reason. It is your very... Don't go in it expecting JoJo's level of nuance. If you want a layered series of nuance, you're probably better off sticking to something like Hunter x Hunter, and to some extent JoJo's. Soul Eater, I've only ever watched the anime, but as far as I know, it has a different ending than the manga. So the manga might honestly be the better choice. Definitely give 7 Deadly Sins a shot through the anime first before investing in those expensive Kodansha volumes, because they rarely ever go on sale.
Perfect. All right. That's it for now. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. God bless. I wish you nothing but the very best, and we'll catch you on our next episode of Omnibros Live this upcoming Sunday. So bye, everybody.